Okay, so in this lesson we've sketched up our electrodes, we've made our electrodes, we've flushed our electrodes, we've figured out our pickups, and now it's time to run the EDM machine. And I'm going to guess this is probably about a late 70s, mid 80s Excello EDM. These are really great machines. This one's pretty old. I know they've had it for a while here, and it still runs great every day. And the nice thing about these particular machines, any good electrician can fix them when they break. You know, you might have to hire an industrial guy, but you don't have to call anybody from Excello, if there was an Excello place to call. But no specialist needed. A good industrial electrician can take care of anything that happens in this power supply. Pretty simple. So we're going to get started tonight with the positioning our electrodes, and let's do some burning and see how it goes. It's been about 15 years since I've pressed the cycle start button, so hopefully it's kind of like riding a bike, and we can get right back on it. So let's get started. Alright, so in preparation here, I've got my two sets of electrodes, 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. I've got my print and a couple sets of depth mics here. I brought in my depth mics with the 6-inch base and my depth mics with the 4-inch base in case I need to reach up a little higher. So we've got a nice, well-prepared area to go here. The only thing I see I'm missing, I'll grab that in a second, is my flush line that's going to screw into the side of my electrodes. But what we'll do next is place our part into the EDM and get ready for the burning process. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is, most EDM machines you'll find, if you bought one that doesn't have one, you need to put a magnetic chuck on your machine, and this saves you a lot of time. The reality is, for the most part, EDM doesn't put any pressure or exert any force on your workpiece, so magnet's more than good enough to hold your piece from moving around. And in fact, this is an electromagnetic chuck. Usually I use the permanent ones, but this is a nice setup here. Let's see here. So you've got a magnet on and off here somewhere, I suppose. So what we want to do is make sure our chuck is nice and clean. Take our workpiece, make sure it's nice and clean, and we're going to set it up against the rail. And Brian, you want to tell me where the magnet? Oh, here it is, right here. We're on. Alright, so the next step is Ryan, are you focused in on here at all?
No, I am.
Okay. Got a couple different options here with this particular machine. We've got one large holder here that's mounted to the head. It's just a right angle plate, almost like a V-block, and he's got a smaller one mounted inside of that. And what they've got here is this looks like one of your stakes for a burn, right? So we can probably pull that out. Or it might have been used for a stop. Possibly a stop. Might not be a bad idea. We might use that. Now, you can always, with these type of electrodes, that we're going to start with our first burn, the square one. Let's see which way I want my flush line going here. Flush line comes in from this side, so I think I'll put it in like this. As long as your electrode is sticking out far enough for your actual burn, and we're only burning a 1/2 inch deep, this will be fine. And again, I've always found finger tightening is plenty good enough. So as you can see, they've just got these two little clamps with looks like 1032s in there. That should be fine. Now we don't even still have to turn the machine on. We can start roughing in about where we're going to work. And we know that back corner we're going to be burning right in this area here. So I think we might have to go to a handheld version here, and let me show them how to fire up the actual controls. Alright, so to get started here on this particular machine, we have a master start. And for this machine to really get going, I'm pretty sure first thing we have to do is unlock the head. And the reason these older machines, I don't know about the newer ones, they have a lock on the head, is at the end of the day when you're all done and you shut the machine off, the hydraulics will slowly sink down. And if you have an electrode in here, especially a delicate one, It'll just slowly sink down until it hits the piece, and it might smash the piece, it might not. So at the end of the day, you lock this head. So we're going to loosen this head up, okay? And then we have a valve to open the hydraulics up here. Now, there's a jog button over here where I can jog this down. And this electrode is not hot right now. We're pretty safe here. As you can see, I'm going to hit my stop up here, so I need to raise this out of the way. That's a friction fit, my micrometer head. And then I'll lock the head. You can see this dial's moving. That stops it. Now I'm in position where I can depth mic into my electrode, and I have these pickups written down. As we figured out in our last video, we're going to measure 502 thousandths from the back edge in, 502 thousandths from the side edge in. So very simply, I love depth mics. Now I should, I don't know if this has the handle on this side now. My saddle moves back and forth with a handle here, and goes this way back and forth with a handle over here. I'm not sure if you can get that or not.
I can kind of get it.
That's 517. Now, unfortunately, we lost the readout on this machine, so I've got to do it the old-fashioned way by reading the graduations on the handle. A little over 501. Come on. $502. Now there's a lock under here. You can lightly lock the table. We're not milling here. After I lock it, I'm going to check it one more time. Still at 502, and then we have to measure in 502 from the back side. A little harder to pick up on the camera, I understand. That's 12. $96. $510, 8 more thousand. I'm missing something. I'm going the wrong way. I'm sorry. 506. 503, and 1 more thousand. This handle's loose. It might be what's doing the air here. The dial's loose.
Yeah. It's missing that lock screw.
You didn't need that when you had the readout up and running.
No.
Alright, so now we're at 502 and 502 on each side. I believe there's a lock here also. Yes. I'm going to lock our saddle this way. So our table's locked in. Now the last thing left is to pick up our depth. Alright, Ryan, if you want to come over here. Alright, so what we do to pick up our depth is we've got this micrometer head here. We're going to set that at 0. This micrometer head is timed out to hit this limit switch, even with this, if I'm not mistaken, correct? That way you can put gauge blocks in between, on this to get deeper depth. But we'll figure that out later.
Yeah.
Alright, so basically I'm going to bring this thing down fairly close, unlock my head, and now I cannot put power to this electrode unless the coolant switch is on. So you'll hear that start. On this particular machine, 1 is full power, 10 is that power divided by 10. So these are your lighter settings and these are your heavier settings. More overburn, more power. Less overburn, better finish, less power. I'm going to switch this to normal. There's a high, low, medium. And I'm also going to put this at 9 spine for a pickup. So now what I'll do is you can see the head's backing up out of the way automatically here because the machine's on. I should be able to hit my cycle start button. And by controlling my servo, voltage and feed, I'm going to come down until I just spark off on the top of that peak. Lightly. And it's going to hit. And there it is. And all I need to do here is tap my micrometer down until the machine shuts off. And we've got a 0 set there. Now what I'll do is back that off and hit cycle start again. I want to see how accurate I was. And I'm going to screw this until it stops. Alright, it's actually about 2,000 reading positive. I could actually back this off and do it again. I'm going to burn half-inch deep. I'm just going to back this off 502. And you can see this has been tapped before. I'm not the first one to do that. And my touch might have been a hair heavy, but that's fine. As long as I know where my 0 was. So we're burning 502. And that's that. And it looks like you guys put this in here just to keep somebody from bumping it. Not a bad idea. Alright. Now, the electrode at this point is safe to touch because it hit the stop and shut the power off. Let's see what it looks like with the power on. You do not want to touch your electrode with your fingers or your scale when that yellow button is on. That's your power, okay? So we'll shut that off. Then all we need to do now is screw our fitting in. Hook our hose to it. And this line here, I believe, controls that. Okay? Got my electric coming on the bottom. You don't need to turn that up much. You don't need a lot of pressure there. You just need enough to flush the electrode out. Okay? The second thing we're going to need is some extra dielectric flooding the electrode like this. Now when I turned that on, I lost a little pressure on this one. They're all connected in this manifold. So then I'm going to turn this back up a little bit until I get a little stream out of there. The big question is, when do you flood the tank? And I don't know where the door is. There it is right there. There's a rubber gasket around the door itself where you can clamp this door shut and flood the tank. You'll find you usually flood the tank for much larger burns or when you've got the heat turned way up and there's a fire risk. You're going to see definitely some flames here a little bit, maybe some sparks shooting out, but we're not going to be burning at that high of a setting. Now I know because the fine work that Dieters does here, this is set at 8. I'm usually more in the 5 range, but we shall see how this works out. So we've got our stop set, cycle start, and now we're going to watch and listen to how this sounds. So we can feed it down rather rapidly. And what you're going to find is a combination of these two knobs, your feed and your servo, to get the right reading to produce a good burn. We want the sound of bacon and eggs frying here. Okay. Now if you hear it pushing too hard, that's pushing a little too hard. That's too hard. Not enough. If I remember right, you don't really worry too much about the amp. We're worried about the volt. You want to be between 60 and 80 here, and you'll hear it. If I mess with the servo, I can hear it, I can feel it trying to push too hard. That's too light, all you're going to get is wear. And as you find that perfect burn and get a better bite, you're going to get more amp. One last thing I'm going to do is stop this and turn this to reverse polarity. Most machines you can burn in reverse or normal. A little more wear on reverse, but I like it better. Okay, let's hit cycle start again. Feed down to it.
Make sure it's in graphite too. Oh, it is.
Now we've got some other options here. I don't know if a lot of times the vibrator doesn't work. I can hear it.
Yeah.
That helps a little bit. And then we've got a trim button. That's a trim on a boat. Play with that a little bit. These are all little ways to fine tune the burn. And then we've got cycle interrupter, which I don't know if we really need, but let's try it once. You can make that burn as long as you want, then back out, or short burn. Short spurt. Sometimes for real fine electrodes, you might do a real fine spurt. I'm going to kick this down to 4. I don't think we need to interrupt this. I'm watching that. We've only burned, I'm going to guess, about 20,000 feet. I got it for 120,000 feet. So as you can see, it's a slow process. So, on this particular machine, simple, hydraulic coolant. This is jog when you're off and on, with powering the head off, just to move the head up and down. Master start, master stop. Cycle interrupter, cycle start, switch to go from graphite to metal electrodes. I'm using all the capacitors on the machine right now. Instead of just 4 levels. The finer the electrode, the higher this number would be. This divides your power, like I said. These are all little add-ons here. Again, frequency vernier, the duty cycle. You can see it's doing little things. You're watching these 2 dials. How's that sound to you, Ryan?
Yeah. Doesn't sound super awesome, but
Does it?
burning.
You don't think it sounds that good?
I don't know. I'm terrible at judging that. Sam does all the settings.
Well, thanks for the vote of confidence.
Sorry. It's burning.
Don't forget, we've only got one flush line in the middle, too.
That's true. It's not roughed out either.
No, we're burning
Yeah.
right out of the solid. Alright, no sense in watching this thing burn a half-inch deep. Let's pause it. Alright, so I've made a design change. I've been here watching my timer here. We are almost 350 deep. That's going to shut off in just a minute. It'll be 50 minutes to burn 350,000 deep. So rather than sit here all night burning this, the reality is what we could have done, now you see after it hits the stop it backs out. Okay, and then I can use my jog button to get this out of the way. I'm going to turn off my coolant or my dielectric flush lines. Unhook my line, remove my electrode. Remove my fitting, and then we'll put the second electrode in. So that took about 50 minutes to burn 350,000 feet. That's pretty slow. And in hindsight, A, when you have an EDM machine, sometimes you need to find other stuff to do. And B, it wouldn't have been a bad idea to maybe drill a 7/16 hole right in the middle of that thing. To be honest with you, I forgot a little bit how slow this process can be. So let's turn our flush line back on. And I was actually quite aggressive with this thing. So I'm going to use the hydraulic system to rapid it down. Look at the travel on this dial indicator.
Yeah, it's pretty extreme.
I think it's got 8 inches of travel. Get close, turn the cycle start on, and down we go again. It's feeling its way in a little bit. Can't push it. You can see it's bouncing a little bit here. So I turn the feed down. Let it feel its way in. I left that flush line in there in the hopes of being able to break it off a little easier. And you'll know when it gets a bite at the bottom. Right now I think we're bouncing on the flush line a little bit. Now if we take the electrode we just used versus a new one, not much wear at all. Maybe 30 thousandths of wear. still picking its way down there. Turn the flush a little higher. I expect a bite probably around 30 or 40 thousandths away. This is very typical. And the trick when it's doing that is not to push it hard. Just let it find its way down. Frustrating a little bit, but once it bites, it'll be fine. Getting there, very close. Stuff's bouncing like that. There it goes. The good news is we got very little wear. Okay, there's electrode number 2 down. I use my jog button to bring an electrode up, shut off my dielectric. Remove my dielectric tube. Somebody actually wrote me an email the other day wanting to know, is there a source of this tubing that doesn't get hard in EDM oil? And that's true, it does get hard. And I don't know. I used to just keep a roll of it, and depending on how much burning you're doing, you just snip off another piece every once in a while. It just gets hard. The oil just bakes it, plus the heat. Jog it down. Cycle start. That was it. So, Brian, I don't know if you can get in here. Do we have an air hose handy here? Or just that the one behind you there? I can get it. You stand there. Just that one there, you think will work?
Yeah. Should reach. But there was one on this machine.
Now what you want to do is just lightly tickle this thing. There's your first feature burn. Can you zoom in on that? And the next thing we need to do is get that flush line out of there. Now, you show them this. Sometimes you just find little pieces of copper tubing or something. They kind of made this up. This is a piece of tungsten rod with a hole in it that they bought, a tube, and then they made up a little plunger. So when they break off the flush drill and it gets stuck inside the tube, you can just push it out. And I think I need to raise this a little bit more. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide the tungsten rod over the tube all the way to the bottom, twist it, pretty big flush line actually. There it is, broken off, and it already fell out. No, it didn't. Here it comes. There you go.
That fell.
Now we do have a little flush line mark at the bottom. I'm going to take a picture of that. And you would have to, if that was important, you'd have to polish that out. So what we'll do next I am going to, it was supposed to be 500 by 500. I've got a 1/2 inch gauge block here. That slides in, that slides in. Now what I'll do tomorrow is I will measure this, because I'm flying blind here. I don't have an overburn chart. I know I burn this quite aggressively, and that's why usually in the mold making industry, if I was making the block, if I was a tool maker making the block that was going to fit in here, I'd at least leave with 2 or 3 thousandths on the side in case the electrode burned a little oversized. In this case, we did burn a little oversized, and I'll get a size for you guys tomorrow at work. Alright, so next, burn number 2. As you can see, we only needed 3 hits on this one, and also I could take the time too, and I'll do that, to check the depth. This is supposed to be at .350. So now we're going to change over to this holder for our next burn. We're going to take out this last electrode. So 1, 2, and 3 are done. And then what we're going to do is remove this stop that's in here and remove this other V block that's in here. I'm going to install this holder. Tighten it down. And then the last thing I'm going to need, which I forgot to bring, is a small Allen wrench for a 1032, Ryan. So if you want to pause that, get the small Allen wrench and tighten this electrode in. Alright, so I've got my holder here. I'm sliding my electrode in. Very important that I push it all the way up against the stop in the back. You don't have to wrench these things down, it's not an end mill. Use this side of the Allen wrench as your handle. And then we're going to do our pickups for this electrode. And on my side of my block in, we set 875 to the shank on the top. With a 1/4 inch wide. I'm going to bring this down a hair more. I've got it locked. Okay, 611. at 650 and I need to be at 875. So there's 750. Gonna double check, I should be at 850 now. Actually, I'm at 875. You gotta watch these depth mics, but. Now, I remember saying in an earlier video, alright, I am at 875. You can see I am barely reaching up to my shank here. I'm only holding on here by a half an inch here, okay? So that's why sometimes when you run an EDM machine and you're going to do this, you need depth mics with a bigger base like this. I can go maybe another thou. There's our 875 that way. And then to the top of our draft the other way, we wanted 1 inch 502. Remember, that's not on the angle, it's 5 degrees. We're going to come up to the top here. And we're going to clean that off a little bit. Funny, 1 inch 500. $451. $25 more thousand. Far. Let's set up 55. Of course, this is made much easier with the use of a readout. Unfortunately, this machine lost its readout in 2 weeks ago. Okay, so as you can see, I've got to get way up to here to mic. That's why these come in handy with the big bases, because with this one, it would have been a stretch. So that's why I ended up with a set of mics, depth mics, with a 6-inch base to reach up to the shanks and electrode. All right, next up, we're gonna screw on our flush line. And I do want to make sure, yes. That's part of my glove.
Okay. There's no continuity through that, but...
Right. There's no way I'm going to burn this at the same heat as I burned the last one. So I've divided my burner up to 7 here versus the 4. Alright, and I think I'm going to leave my peak burn at normal. And then we're going to turn on our think I'm going to get in the habit with this machine that's bringing back memories. You turn on this one first, the one that's going to kind of flush the area. Then you turn on your little one to your electrode. You can kind of see what you get. And if you look, you see the flush lines come to the water, the coolant coming out of there. Got it?
I think so.
Now, my mistake, I'm going to shut that back off for a second. And what I want to do is pick up the height. So I'm going to come down here and turn this to 9. I'm going to set this at 0. Then I'm going to turn on my cycle start, release my lock, come down. When that hits, did I run out of travel? Did that hit?
You might have.
Oh.
Ooh. That's why they call them burners.
We'll wait till it comes down and hits again. Okay. It's at 2,000, so I'm going to set it at 752. I'm setting it for burning. Bring it up to these dials up here.
Okay.
Working between your servo and your feed, what you're looking for is a consistency with those dials. Now obviously if I back it off, I'm really not doing much. Push it as hard as you can. You don't want those jumping too much. But you also want to push it as hard as you can between your feed and your servo so you're drawing your maximum amperage. So it does that. That's still pushing a little hard. Now I can't see because we ran out of travel on our indicator here. There's different ways around that. You can put something around it just to get an idea where you're at. Maybe. Maybe not. Everything I pick up is small. At least I have an idea what I'm doing now. So I am pretty happy with the way that sounds. Hard. can tell when you're in the wrong place when the needles start going like this and you can hear the electrode pushing. As long as it sounds like that, we're moving right along here. You can see we're burning at a pretty rapid clip. Compared to these electrodes, which were square, this electrode's actually longer and going deeper, but it's burning such a small width, 50 thousandths at the tip. So it's moving, it's going down a lot faster than the last one was. Now you saw it bounced out of there. Sometimes it gets a little carbon in there and it flushes itself. It arcs out is what it's doing, and it's going to lift itself out. When you find your electrodes are having that much trouble, and the deeper you're burning, the more it'll do that. Now, right now we're pretty fortunate. It's burning and it's clearing itself like it is right now. Now, if that becomes an issue, it's going back enough to clear that whatever is at its way as an arc. Alright, let's see if we can push it down a little bit. Alright, I'm going to switch to an interrupted cycle. Maybe that will help it. You know what? Could I possibly be out of travel?
Yeah. It looks pretty maxed out for travel.
It's just sitting there. Alright, we're going to have to re-pick up. Alright, let's stop this. Pretty simple. Good problem to run into while we're live. Back it up. The only thing I hate is that without the readouts and I don't have a zero set, what I have to do now is move it over and re-pick up the height. So the easiest way to redo that would be to have a block that you do the height of and just set it down on the block on there right now, but it's got to be a block that you don't mind putting a burn mark into.
I can get you one.
Sure. Pause it. Alright, so we have a problem. We ran out of travel. Simple solution here. First I'm going to loosen, make sure my cycle is off. The electrode holder is not hot. I'm going to loosen these two clamps and extend my holder. No big deal. Hopefully that'll be enough. That's in place. Now Ryan has got a block here, and this is a nice thing to have. This block is 340 thick. So now all I have to do is come down, turn my heat back down, now technically, what I should do here, and I'm not going to worry about it, I should put a finish electrode in there right now that doesn't have any wear on it. Because we've already burned a little bit, but I'm not going to worry about it. Take the time, I would pull this electrode out, put a finish electrode in, pick up the depth, then put the rougher back in. But for now, what did I say, that's 340 thick?
Yes.
Okay. Cycle start. Turn off the interrupter. Gently come down. Alright. Cycle start again. I don't need all this stuff, hopefully. Good. Set a 0 here. Then I'm going to tap this down. shuts off. Alright, so now I know I've got to go 340, get to the piece, plus 750. 1 inch 090. Alright. Technically, this is just a 1 inch bevel here. Travel on this micrometer head. There's 1 inch, and I went to cheat. 25. Oh, was in there. 1 inch. 25. 50. 75. 90. Cycle start, pulling on. Alright, we'll get into lapse time on that first burn. Okay, so you can pause it.
Ready.
These two dials, on this particular machine, you want your volts as close to 60 as you can. And that's by using your servo and your feed rates here. The closer you get to 60, the more amps you'll draw, which makes you burn faster. Now you can see we're getting towards the end of our burn here. We got about 50 thousandths left, and it's arcing a little bit. Not a serious problem right now, but it's clearing itself. Every once in a while it's getting a chunk of carbon or steel in there that's getting stuck on those steep 1 degree walls. So it'll stop and back itself out, clear it, and bring itself back down. A little earlier we couldn't get it to go back down, and it took a little bit of messing around to get it to get another bite. It's not uncommon, if you have to pull the electrode off, shut the cycle start off, your cycle button off, so your electrode's not hot, and take a piece of 500 paper and rub the sides of your electrodes. So see, it's backing out now. It's got dirt in there it doesn't like. We're almost to the bottom now, it's getting a little finicky. As long as it clears itself and goes back down, like that, we're good. Now, Ryan, is this in your wheelhouse right now?
Yep.
I was talking to Ryan earlier about this switch that I threw across the shop half an hour ago. Basically, this is a micrometer head. It's on a magnet, and it's dowel pinned into a tractor. So you can slide this up and down. This micrometer head only has 1 inch of travel. So what do you do if you want to burn 1.5 inches, or 2 or 3, 4 inches? You know, this thing obviously has a lot of travel, but you only have a 1 inch micrometer head. Now, Ryan's going to check with his brother, but what I recall doing was taking the paint off of this part of the limit switch mount and adjusting my limit switch until it was even with this. Meaning I could put a 2 inch gauge block on this shelf and set this out to 0.750 and I would burn 2 inches 750. As it stands right now, I know when this shuts off, I believe any second here, unless I'm 100,000th off here, when this shuts off, it's not even close to, this limit switch hangs out a lot above this shelf. So I would know maybe there's a washer around here that fits over that, but you gotta have a way and a gauge block to here, 1, 2, and 3, to add to your micrometer head so you can do deeper burns. So Ryan said he would check on that. Apparently, I still have a little ways to go here, so we'll pause it until this electrode's down. All right, so we've got our first hit down. We'll turn off our dielectric. Remove our flush line. Slide out electrode number 1. That's it. I don't know if you can see the wear on that. Probably not the best background, but it's worn. It's got 3 flush lines in it that no doubt are going to be sticking up inside this rib now, this feature. Because I've staggered the electrodes, I've got to get in there and get rid of those. Sometimes you can just bend them over, the electrode burn them off. We're going to see what happens. Those are awful thin. So now we're down to electrode number 2. Screw our fitting in. Slide our electrode in. Push it up all the way back to the stop. Lightly tighten it in with our Allen wrench. Hook up our flush line. This one might leak a little bit because this is the one that was cracked. Turn on our flush line to our electrode. Let's see what happens. It's bouncing off those old flush lines a little bit. You feed it really lightly, you might be able to get past them. I turn the heat down a little bit. Well, there's no doubt in my mind those are in the way. Unless this gets a real good bite real soon, we're going to have to figure out if we can break them off. Now this is where you would normally have some very small pieces of copper tubing, smaller than this, to get in here. I don't have that. Unfortunately, this rib is so narrow, I can't get anything down in there to break those off. I can't bend them either. Do you have any small chisels or anything, Ryan, that I might be able to break them off with?
Should I keep recording?
Yeah, you can pause it. Or, yeah.
Great.
Okay, so we've got our first electrode down with that second feature, and one thing I did underestimate was how tough it was going to be to get the flush lines broken off. So I'm going to take this, we're going to take a break tonight. The first electrode's down, and then I'm going to take a look at this under some good lighting and make up a few little chisels at work that I can slide in there and work back and forth. Now, this, don't forget, this electrode's 50 thousandths at the tip. So we're going to have a very small point at the bottom of this thing, but that's how we're going to have to get around this, because this electrode now is bouncing off the old flush line, so we're going to have to figure out a way to get those out before this one can go down. So we did get pretty far tonight, but we've got a few issues that do come up in the EDM room, and this is one of them, removing the old flush line. So I wasn't sure what we had here, and Ryan will check around the shop, see what he's got, and I'll take this to work and see what I can make to get rid of it, and we'll finish this off in the next lesson. So here's a few comments, notes, and thoughts on the video we just produced here on being in the EDM department here. So let me go over a few things I want to make clear here. One, that half-inch by half-inch hole, I grossly underestimated the time it was going to take to burn that out from a solid. In hindsight, I should have at least drilled like a 7/16 hole in there and got some of that stock out of the center. I really didn't think it would take that long, but it was a pretty slow go there. So don't get cute. You don't want to get too close to your walls, because the EDM, the graphite likes something to bite into. So if you put this in your CNC and you finish these sidewalls and just leave the corners, you'd be surprised. It'd probably be faster if you just left yourself 30 or 60 thousandths on each wall, or just drilled a hole in there so the electrode has something to bite on. But that would have certainly helped in that situation. One thing I wanted to make clear, this is not a handle off the machine I was running the other night, but it's the only picture I could find online of a machine handle. And you know how they usually have this thumb screw here that you can loosen the handle and set the dial to 0 along a line, so it's much easier to dial off your dimensions or set a 0 and mic into it. Well, this thumb screw is missing on both their machines, so the dials are floating. So that's why it took me a little extra time to mic into my electrodes, because I couldn't tell how much I was moving the table. We need to fix that. I want to make sure I'd mentioned this in the video, this micrometer head mounting in the stop. Preferably, I like to see the paint scraped off of this surface on the top and this micro switch adjusted so it's even with the top. That way your micrometer head is even with this. That way whenever you crank it down to 0, the micro switch and the thimble match and it shuts off. That way, if you need to, because this micrometer head only has 1 inch of travel, as I said in the video, if you wanted to set it for 1.5 inches, 2.5, 3.8, whatever, you can put gauge blocks on top of this over the micro switch and then adjust your micrometer head. The only other option they're going to have here is to put some sort of a washer, which they might have. Ryan might have not known what it was. That's exactly the same height as when this shuts off. So if this thing is sticking up 92 thousandths when it shuts off, you need a 92 thousandths washer with a hole in it that clears that, but it's something you could stack gauge blocks on. One of the things that was missing the other night, we definitely needed a small chisel. This is a little chisel I made at work of an old ejector pen, and it's just a piece of 6-inch long ejector pen. That's what it looks like on the end. I've chiseled it down, or I've actually used a hand grinder, just a pedestal grinder, to take down both sides. So I had about a 50 thousandths tip, and then I arc this little radius on by hand, and the next view of it, that's the thinness. Okay, so it's pretty thin there, but all we need is something to break off those flush lines. As you can see on the bench, I hope I was able to capture, you can see 2 of the flush lines in there, and they're very small. And again, I was able to stick this chisel down in there and hit it a little bit with a brass hammer, and was able to remove the flush line. And you can see that little flush line right there that's stuck to my chisel, but that's the first one I got out. Another issue we ran into off camera, we kept seeing a white flash, and that usually means you've got some sort of an arc mark. Couldn't figure out why we were getting an arc mark, and when we were all done, well, we did figure it out. Now, that actually looks a lot worse than it is. That's probably not even 1 thousandths deep. You can see it's got a little bit of chunk of carbon even stuck in it. What did that come from? We couldn't figure it out. Well, we did figure it out later. My stop. Now my stop actually didn't hit. That was the weird part. You can see, if you look closely, my electrode does clear that stop. But here's one of the beautiful parts about running an EDM machine. What was happening here is, because I had this extra flush line blowing all my, flushing my excess graphite towards the back. That's where my stop was. And that's not exactly the right electrode holder. I just noticed that. But I just want to make sure you understood. It was this flush line was pushing the graphite towards the back of the machine, and that's where my stop was. So graphite was collecting under that, and I didn't know it. All right. So the easiest solution is to just chop the stop off a little bit so it's below, or it's not even with the top of the electrode holder. Simple solution. Finally, it was painfully noticeable the other night. I needed better lighting. So you definitely, if you're going to be using an EDM machine, you need a nice mag light. Buy a good one. You probably use one every so often because the oil from your hands will eventually get into this thing and foul up the batteries or the light. But you need a mag light to see what you're doing. And again, back to that other picture, if I can find that quickly, um, here. You can see how important it was for me to have the mag light so I could see those flush lines and get them out with the chisel. All right. So a mag light is a big addition to your arsenal for running an EDM machine. And finally, one other thing I do want to say is that we used to use these, and I'll find you a source for those. That's a little small piece of copper tubing, and they make that stuff incredibly small, you know, 1/16th in diameter and smaller even. And what I would do, I used to just push that over my flush lines, and it would work great for you to just wiggle it back and forth until the flush line broke off. Now, sometimes the flush line after it breaks off gets stuck up in here. It's not worth the time to try and get it out. You just snip off the copper and go back in and break off the next one. So all things being equal, when I go back to the EDM machine next time, I think I'm going to burn my flush lines all the same on the first 3 electrodes, break those off, and then let the 4th one clean up any nubs that are left. We'll see how that strategy works. So that's it from now for the EDM class. I know there's going to be more, and I know there's going to be a lot of follow-up with you guys, but I also want you to know that I didn't spend a ton of time teaching you the control on that Excello because each machine is different. Excello, I happen to know that machine. I was glad to have access to that machine, and what it really, I love the fact that it's got so many knobs on it to adjust the burn so precisely. A lot of machines just have switches, so you're clicking to settings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. With the Excello, with so many knobs, it gives you a lot more variables in your settings. But the issue is most of you guys probably aren't going to be running Excello, so there's not a lot of value to teaching you the ins and outs of that control. So we'll see you on the next video.